Welcome back to Nesh Talks, our series where we explore how AI is transforming sales in the chemical and materials industry. I am Jacqueline Wasem, head of marketing at Nesh. Today, we're diving into the critical challenge, how the shift in industry expertise, especially with experienced professionals retiring, is reshaping technical sales. Generative AI is emerging as a powerful tool to bridge this gap, but what does that really look like in practice? Today, to break it down, I'm joined by Brendan Boyd, an R&D leader with deep industry expertise, and Sidd Gupta, founder and CEO of Nesh. So let's get started. To kick it off, Brendan, can you share some insights on how the changing landscape of retiring chemical experts has impacted sales motions?
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Jacqueline. Absolutely. So, when we think about the silver tsunami, I think is the one phrase that I've used here to describe this demographic shift that's really impacting chemical industry and all industries actually in general, is one where, as leaders, you're looking at, I have these really experienced people that have a lot of subject matter knowledge and expertise. And, they're looking at moving on to the next phase of their kind of lives into retirement and things like that. And so when you think about what that means to leaders and companies, it's the potential loss of, decades of knowledge out the door. And it's not just the sales folks or a technical person in R&D or a tech service person. It's also in all the supporting functions that help back up sales, like product management, regulatory, in supply chain and other groups as well. And so it really is quite a huge problem for the industry in terms of how do I go about retaining that knowledge, knowing that, in a lot of cases, it's really tough to implement, great succession plans for every position that you have in your company. And so, maybe let me throw it over to Sidd and just kind of go, hey, Sidd, what are some thoughts that you have on how AI can help with minimize the loss of knowledge from the silver tsunami?
Hey, Brendan. Hey, Jacqueline. Good to see you both again. That's an interesting question. So we've been thinking about this for a little while now, and I think about it like both qualitatively and quantitatively. So when we were kind of thinking about how to bridge this technical knowledge gap, we were interested in understanding, one, how true is this? How much do the commercial teams rely on the expertise? So we looked at the data for about 100 specialty chemical companies. We deliberately ignored commodity chemicals because, as you know, the sales motion tends to be different there. And we looked at the data for about 100 companies, and it was almost like a straight line correlation of how many experts you have in your company versus how much each rep, how much revenue they're generating. So it's like a straight line, straight slope. The more experts you have, the more revenue each rep generates. So that kind of told us that, yes, if you provide more expertise to your commercial team, if they have the more technical backing, then they can actually close more deals and close them faster. So that was the basis of kind of this thesis that if we can use AI to supplant and provide some of that expertise to the frontline sales team, then they'll be able to actually go and support their customers better. That's how I think about it. And then what we also found in general, what kind of conversations do these two teams have with each other, because they have a really strong relationship, like the commercial team and then the expert panel.
Yep. And when you think about, that's probably one of the toughest things too, is when you start to think about some of these, people moving out and people moving into these types of positions. It's those connections that also get kind of severed and lost in the churn of personnel. And then, I think one of the things that we've talked about that's, a belief for us is that when you think about generative AI and that really easy interface that you can get with that back to your subject matter, provides a really unique forum in which you can almost have these avatar-like types of entities that are providing that information back to the experts that need the
right. Yeah, and then also it's interesting you bring it up because the whole creating a virtual expert to help out the sales team. When we were speaking with some of our kind of customers today, and we understand what their sales process looks like, we see it's very different from some of the other industries, like take software, for example, or financial services. And I'm in the software business, so we see how we sell. Like, we are on the emails all the time. We're like prospecting. We are calling up people. We are doing cold outreach. Chemical sales is very different, right? It's very relationship driven. You have deep embedded relationships. You know a customer for the last like 15 years. You've been working with them. So you can't just expect that an AI will sit in front of the customer and then be able to kind of close deals or send cold emails or like do outreach. And so it's very important that you don't take out the human element here, is that relationship is still preserved. There is a like sort of like a human link there, but AI can definitely scale it a lot more easier. So that's what we were very cognizant of. Like, how do you make sure that the avatar can provide the support, but then also make sure that they're always in control. The human is always in control.
Yeah, because like you said, particularly in more kind of specialty and less commodity side, there's so many kind of attributes that are associated with the product that you're selling in terms of what it can do for the customer, as well as what your company can actually do for that customer too, that aren't just embodied in like the product and the price along the way. And you learn those over time. So being able to kind of capture that information and have it available to the sales folks as they're going and interacting with customers is pretty important. And it would be pretty tough to imagine a situation in which you didn't have that human interaction, as you described with the sales people. So, one of the things that you worry about a little bit with AI is the kind of the quality of the output of the information. So you kind of go in and you train these large language models on the subject matter that you want to train them on. Maybe can you help me understand a little bit more? How do we make sure that the quality of the information that's coming from the avatar is what we would expect it to be, just like if it was coming from a human?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things we also wanted to be very careful about, because we looked at like different architectures that different AI tools use, and like mostly everybody uses like a RAG architecture today to kind of retrieve information from the corpus that's there. But what we saw was that like when we put a RAG system in front of sales reps, like sometimes they don't trust the AI because they don't know if the answer that they're getting is actually correct or not. And they don't want to risk it. They don't want to just talk to the customer and give them incorrect information or like information that they can't vet themselves. So one of the things that we found early on was that you have to actually onboard experts onto the platform before you start onboarding commercial or salespeople onto the platform. And the experts actually vet the answers. They ask, like almost like doing a blind test of the system, to ask questions that they already know an answer to. And they go and check the validity of the AI, like, is it actually giving the correct answer or not? And they are saying, this is true, and this is not true. This is true, this is not true, this is true. And the more they do that, the AI system kind of learns from that, and it will kind of start showing green shields and verified marks on the answers. And we see that the moment the reps start using the system afterwards, and then notice that the expert has already used it, their confidence just exponentially goes up. And they know that somebody has actually come in and spent some time looking at this. So I think that's one of the things where we have found works really well. But I'm sure there's like other like sort of like technology things we can use to improve it. But this is more of like a change management or process management thing that we found works really well.
Yeah. When you think about moving from the use of Nesh from the subject matter experts into the sales, how do most of those interactions occur? Is it just through like a chat interface? Do people kind of use verbal prompts and things like that? Has that been able to kind of keep up with how, newer folks might be able to interface with the AI?
We are still learning a lot about like how our kind of customers and the market wants to use some of these tools. But so far, what we have seen is that because the sales process is so relationship driven, they're in the customer's office, they are talking to the people, they're looking them in the eye, they're like going out for dinner. So sometimes we notice that like people aren't using Nesh live in front of the customers, right? They're usually going back to the office, or they're in their cars, they then pull it up on their phone and they're kind of talking to it, or they're typing their question in. The other interesting thing that we found, Brendan, is that a lot of the times we see like our customers are in different geographies. They're in like China, they're in Thailand, they're in Malaysia, in Europe, in different countries. So a lot of the times, like English is not their native language, it's not their mother tongue. And new sales reps often will kind of hesitate to talk to an expert who may be in the US and ask them question in English. And they're like, okay, language is a barrier. And in this case, because AI is sort of like multilingual, we see them like talking to Nesh in all different kinds of languages. Sort of that takes that barrier away. And yes, they can always obviously talk to an expert whenever they want to, but it just makes it a little bit easier for them to kind of get answers in things that they're more confident in or more comfortable in.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny that we're talking about AI, but that's one of the, classic kind of pitfalls of human behavior is when you're don't know something, it can be the hardest thing that you can do sometimes is asking for help to get that information. So kind of thinking about that use case in which, somebody can interact with the avatar first before approaching the subject matter expert to have a more kind of pointed and hopefully more productive conversation than, having to have a large teaching session in the front part of that conversation is, that's pretty beneficial from a time management perspective for everybody too.
Yeah, I think that's especially true for new sales reps who are ramping on new materials and new products. Is there anything final thoughts we want to say about maybe training new sales reps that we might take away from this?
Yeah, I would say that the learning curve that you're on, particularly moving into a specialty, very kind of technically complex product to sell, is a pretty steep one. So the case that Sid was talking about in terms of the sales rep, engaging with the avatar, you can almost think of that as providing almost a 24/7 kind of training module for the sales rep that's there when they need it versus kind of being, the working hours for the subject matter expert when they're not in a meeting or not answering emails or not on the phone with somebody else is actually a pretty valuable training tool to go along with the in-person training or the classroom training that would go along with onboarding a new sales rep, I'd see.
Yeah, and my experience, like I'm as a startup founder, like you're in sales like all day long, and I have like a renewed respect for people in the chemical industry sales who are not just selling one product, they're selling like thousands of products. I don't know how they do it. So it's just like anything that we can do even a little bit to help them in moving their sales process a little bit faster. And that's very like encouraging for us to see like how technology can actually help them out, and then the amount of progress that you can make in like 6 months, 7 months in enabling them. So we are still learning. We are kind of learning about all of those things, but yeah, we're excited about like how the commercial team can actually get like very quantifiable returns on investment in technology like this.
Excellent. All right. Well, that wraps up today's conversation on bridging the gap between chemical expertise and sales with AI. A big thanks to Brendan Boyd and Sidd Gupta for sharing their insights. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.